It was like peak quarantine at the time, and I was like home from school. Like, I mean, everyone was in the entire world, like doing Zoom school, and was just trying to figure out, like, honestly, how to capitalize like off of like a global pandemic and like
Yeah.
how to make the best of it. And there had really been no one, I think, in like the slime world that had been like sending like major PR packages to like big influencers and celebrities. Like, it was mostly. So I just randomly decided to DM Addison on Instagram, and she like happened to respond the same day and like gave me her home address and like was like, yeah, send your slime here. And I was like, you're kidding me. Like, this is insane. So I sent her slime. She ended up posting it. The video got like a ridiculous amount of views, and I didn't even really post on TikTok before that. TikTok was still like, there was pretty much like nobody in the slime world that was like on TikTok at the time. It was really just like an Instagram space for slime users. So I started very, very humbly, like with my slime page. Like, I didn't even start selling until a year into creating like a social media basis. So my capital at first was literally just tiny bottles of like Homer's glue, and I would reuse like the same slime over and over again, just like add different things to it to make it look a little different so people wouldn't notice. So I was basically just like I was like rotating between like probably 3 slimes for like.
Guys, before we get into the podcast, 91.6% of you guys are not subscribed. So please do hit the subscribe button, since it will help get even crazier guests and blow up the channel. So yeah, let's get back into the video. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Gen Z Fastlane. Today we have Ricky here, who is going to his 3rd year in U of Chicago. So Ricky, why don't you just give a brief introduction of yourself?
Hi, my name is Ricky. Like Bosco said, I'm entering my 3rd year at the University of Chicago. I'm studying economics and Spanish, and so far my time in the college has been super fun, very rigorous, but it's been a very fun place to be. Outside of school, I'm an avid entrepreneur. I ran my own slime company since 2017, so it's been quite a while at this point. And I'm kind of shifting gears a little bit. I've been working in finance in this upcoming year, so I'm going to test that out. But I'm also always just like an entrepreneur at heart. I want to continue exploring that, so that's a big part of me. I'm originally from California, grew up in the North Bay area, and I'm actually here right now for the summer. And yeah, that's a little bit about myself.
Nice, nice. So before we dive into, the overall logistics of your slime business, which I'm super interested in, I actually watched a couple of videos from, I think, when you're like 15, like I think Inside Edition did like an interview with you. It was super fascinating. So I watched your college application video, like your reaction video, and you chose U Chicago over like UC Berkeley and other universities. So was there like a specific reason why you would choose like, Chicago over like Bay Area, like HaaS business school?
Yeah, totally. So it was a very, very difficult choice. I didn't even end up committing until like literally May 1st, like the very last day possible. And it was mainly between obviously Chicago and Berkeley were like really my two top choices. I think it just came down to the fact that I live like pretty close to Berkeley. I'm like a 15-minute drive away from the school. And I've like grown up like going there. I used to do competitive gymnastics. So I used to have like a bunch of meets on the campus, and obviously like being from around the Bay Area, I know a lot of people that go there. And so it just felt a little too like close to home. My parents were really pushing me to like break out of my comfort zone and go all the way out to Chicago. And I mean, I don't have any like family out in Chicago or really anywhere outside of California. So, and I didn't have any friends that I knew before going to U Chicago. So it was kind of just like a completely blank slate for me. And that's definitely something that I wanted for like many reasons. I wanted to, explore different parts of myself, going off to college, and being able to do so in like a completely new environment was my rationale at the time would be like the best way in order to, learn new things about myself. But at the end of the day, I still know that if I chose Berkeley, I would have been like incredibly happy there. And I still keep in touch with the people that I was going to do like this little cohort with at the school. And I'm literally going to Berkeley on Saturday to visit a bunch of my friends down there. So it's definitely, I still love that school, like with my whole heart. Like I really, really love Berkeley, and like maybe get my MBA at HaaS or something. I don't know. But yeah, it came down to probably mostly geographic. Everything else, like the program at Berkeley, was literally my ideal program. I would have like studied abroad in London for my first semester, and then would have gotten to do like their HaaS business school freshman year all the way through the senior year. which would have been really awesome. And the program itself was very specialized, like what I'm interested in. But so at the end of the day, I also wanted to, Chicago seemed like a big challenge and like a huge step for me. And it was also kind of like mysterious. Like I honestly didn't really know like a lot about the school. I didn't even know what the school was until I like randomly applied. I didn't even like know what Chicago was. So it was like a mystery to me, and I already knew so much about Berkeley. So I just took a leap of faith.
Nice, awesome. I feel like that's pretty unconventional, as many people would choose kind of like the Berkeley side of things. So I've actually have a couple questions because I've always heard things about, the Bay Area, right? Startups, tech companies, everyone's there. So asking a person, who's grown up from the Bay Area, do you think that like played a heavy contribution to, your slime business and just everything around you? Like, do you notice people around you who are also doing these startups? Is it like more likely for you to kind of find people that relates to you since, it's kind of like a startup environment?
That's a good question. Where I like grew up isn't really, it's not like the Silicon Valley like part of the Bay Area. I'm in like wine country area, so it's a lot more like agricultural and not as like techy. But I still definitely, once I entered, like honestly wasn't until I started doing slime that I learned about like how many other kids like me there are in my area. I started going to conventions in the Bay Area and like San Francisco. And I also went to some like Southern California and some other places in the US. And it was then that I realized like how high of a concentration there are of other kids that are like also doing slime ventures like me, that are like 12, 11, like 13, teenagers as well. So it wasn't until I entered that space that I realized how highly concentrated it was, because I don't, I mean, we know like people in tech, but not like super close to me. And like where I live, like an hour and a half away from like Silicon Valley. So I'm like pretty far away from like the heat of all of that. But yeah, once I did kind of get into like the entrepreneurial space, I realized how many of us, like definitely the Bay Area had the highest concentration of any of like slime entrepreneurs, if that's like a good way to say it. But it opened my eyes to that, and now I'm definitely very cognizant of the fact that this is a very startup heavy space in the United States for sure.
Nice, nice. So before we jump into, this whole slime thing, which I'm super interested in, right? How was U Chicago for you?
Yeah, it was a huge adjustment at first. I mean, everything you hear online about U Chicago is like, where fun goes to die. It's like the hardest school in the world, like
Yeah.
rigorous wise, and they just like kick you down, like basically academically, like with grade deflation and all that. So I knew that going into it, and I had those expectations. And those expectations for sure like lived up to themselves. Like it was a very hard school. But socially and in like other regards outside of just like the academic space, I've really come to enjoy it and really, really love it. Um, it definitely nurtures. Oh, sorry, did I cut out? Are you there?
Yeah, I think it cut out a bit. I mean, you can continue. We're good. I
Okay,
think
where
we
did,
watched it. Yeah.
did I like cut off? I can just like say it all over again. Also.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
okay. So what I was saying, like basically, like totally lives up to like the rigorous nature of it. That has been a very prominent part of my college experience so far. I've definitely spent more time in the library than I have in like a frat house. um, but also the social scene really surprised me. And literally like the first night for a week, my freshman year, um, I was not expecting for there to be like parties or for there to be like any sort of social scene. I just thought it was gonna be like the most socially dead place in the world. And that was like absolutely not the case whatsoever. It completely took me by surprise, the fact that like there were so many people that wanted to like, have fun in college, because that's like obviously a huge part of college. And so from being there for the last 2 years, I've definitely seen it's like, I would honestly consider it like the biggest like work hard, play hard school, because all of the people that I know, we're all studying like 24/7. But then like come Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, like everyone's going out, like everyone's still having fun. That doesn't mean just like going out to like frat parties. Like we have downtown Chicago at like our fingertips. So going to like fun dinners, going to like speakeasies, fun clubs around the area. There's so much to do in Chicago, so that's been really fun as well. And also the people at Chicago are just incredible. I've met some of the most like not only intellectual academically, but like most emotionally intelligent people that I've ever met that you can just like sit and talk to for hours and hours and hours and hours. Um,
Nice.
and it's been insane. It honestly was like a huge culture shock for me. Like I didn't come from a huge like feeder high school. Like I was the only kid in my class to go to Chicago, and there's like some other high schools in the Bay Area that send like 20 kids in a class to Chicago, which is like beyond me. Um, but having to adjust, like there were a lot of kids who came from crazy boarding schools and like really really intense college prep schools, and so when they got to Chicago, the like workload and like that social environment was kind of second nature already to them. So having to like assimilate into that as someone that like didn't come from those places from my like 9th through 12th grade experiences was a little tricky at first to navigate. But even like the people I've met, some of the most like privileged people in my life that I've like ever come across. Even they have like the most insane stories. Honestly, some of like the crazier stories. And it's just cool because you meet people from all different like walks of the earth at Chicago. And it's been definitely an awesome experience, and I'm really excited to go back for fall quarter.
Awesome. I think it's really nice to hear this, especially when, there's so much internet stuff on U Chicago being such a negative space, stressful, but, you
Yeah.
know, transitioning to, the slime business, right? RL Slimes,
Yeah.
you managed to send Addison Rae your slime, which is, I think, something that many people would be very fascinated with. How did you get the initial idea to do this?
Yeah. So it was like peak quarantine at the time. And I was like home from school. Like, I mean, everyone was in the entire world, like doing Zoom school, and
Hmm.
was just trying to figure out, like, honestly, how to capitalize like off of like a global pandemic and like
Yeah.
how to make the best of it. Um, and there had really been no one, I think, in like the slime world that had been like sending like major PR packages to like big influencers and celebrities. Like it was mostly you'd send it to like other big slime creators and like they'd post your stuff. And I'd be like, it would stay kind of internally within the slime circle, but like no one really like ventured outside of that. So
Hmm.
I just randomly decided to DM Addison on Instagram, and she like happened to respond the same day and like gave me her home address and like was like, yeah, send your slime here. And I was like, you're kidding me. Like, this is insane. So I sent her slime. She ended up posting it. The video got like a ridiculous amount of views, and I didn't even really post on TikTok before that. TikTok was still like, there was pretty much like nobody in the slime world that was like on TikTok at the time. It was really just like an Instagram space for slime users. So I didn't have any like followers on TikTok, but from her just like posting that, I gained like 40,000 overnight. And then started really like prioritizing TikTok as a platform as well. And then from Addison, she posted, and she ended up posting like 4 videos or something of my slime, and I didn't pay her
Hmm.
a cent. Like I did not give her anything. She did not have to do any of that. Like I should have had to pay her like $1 million for like everything that she did for me. But she was so sweet, so kind, and that definitely helped catapult like a huge part of my slime career, like probably like the biggest part of it. And so I'm super grateful for her for that. And from then, I like ended up reaching out to like a bunch of other like influencers, celebrities, and got some other people to start posting them, and that was super helpful. But that definitely like got my name out there like crazy outside of just like the internal slime world. And that's when like it was because of Addison Rae's video that like you said, like Inside Edition reached out to me and Business Insider, and I had all these different people like flocking to my page, and I was selling out online in minutes, which like I wasn't used to before. So it was a lot, but it was really fun, and it taught me a ton about not only like social media, but just like time management and like how to deal with crazy new changes. But it was a really exciting time for me for sure. And Addison is an absolute sweetheart for all that she did for me.
Nice. So, like, diving more into the slime business, I watched the Inside Edition video I said, and it's just fascinating how you have literally like a whole factory on like the toppest level of your house. So like, how do you manage to, number one, get capital to initially start this business? As I think one of the core issues or like core roadblocks with people, starting their business is that they don't have initial capital. Number two is, how do you stand out from other, slime companies?
Totally. So I started very, very humbly, like with my slime page. Like I would literally was not, I didn't even start selling until a year into creating like a social media basis. So my capital at first was literally just tiny bottles of like Elmer's glue, and I would reuse like the same slime over and over again, just like add different things to it to make it look a little different so people wouldn't notice.
Mm-hmm.
So I was basically just like I was like rotating between like probably three slimes for like 6 months to a year. And then once I like ended up gaining, I think I had like maybe 50,000 followers on Instagram at the time for when I like started actually selling it. So I gave myself plenty of leniency and enough time to make sure that I had like the ability to actually sell things before I started going out and doing it. And anytime like someone who wanted to start a slime company would come to me and ask for help, I'd say, you know what, like really just focus on the social media at first and get your name out there. Start getting some views racked up on your videos. And then once you have people recognizing your slimes and wanting, to feel it, then you can start actually selling it. So I did all of my online sales made to order. So for like the first like bit of it, I wouldn't make like hundreds and hundreds of stock and just wait for it to sell out. I would just let the orders come in, and as they came in, I'd make them, so I wouldn't have to worry about like losses in the beginning. And that did not become sustainable as like I grew, so I had to start actually making like batches and batches, and then waiting for them to sell out. But about differentiating yourself, honestly, I've talked about this a ton with people, and the slime space is really very unique when it comes to like I guess you can call it like a market. Um, and the fact that there isn't like a crazy amount of differentiation. Like pretty much for the most part, every single slime company is selling the same thing, just with like a different name or like different packaging or different marketing. And
Yeah.
there's so many slime companies. Like there's not one slime business that just like monopolizes the entire industry. Like there are like really big names in like the slime world. But even with them, in the market, there are still like so many small accounts that have like 8,000 to 20,000 followers, and they're still selling out of hundreds of slimes on a weekly basis. So honestly, like having like these huge players like doesn't really take away from the other like small companies. So when, of course, you still have to like make sure that there is a little bit of differentiation. And what I did, I capitalized on like a number of things. One of the first things being unique textures that other people weren't
Mm-hmm.
selling. So I talked about this in like like actually job interviews. But there was this one slime texture. It was called icy slime. And I talked about it in my Inside Edition video. But there were like four people in all of the slime industry that knew how to make it. And so the demand for it was like crazy. People were just absolutely
Yeah.
obsessed with this stuff because it looks it. When I say it's called like ice, spelled like ICEE, like a movie theater icy, not like ICY. And that's because it like looks like a movie theater icy. So when you're like pressing it down, it like I don't even know how to explain it. It's a really weird texture that people are fascinated by. So everyone wanted it. And so I ended up, one of my friends happened to know how to make it. And so I was trying to like pry her on like details and how I could like get my hands on this like super top secret recipe that like no one knew.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up figuring it out. She helped me. And so I started selling that by like buckets and buckets of icy slime because hardly anyone was selling it. So like if you could sell it, like that was like gold in the slime world. So I sold a lot of those. And then around like the TikTok age, there was the new texture was also introduced. It's called like do it yourself clay slime, where you basically just make these very intricate designs out of this specific clay from Daiso. And then you like mix it into the slime. It's like a whole like do it yourself process. And I became really big in creating just like super intricate little clay pieces. And so those were like the most sustainable because they took me like hours to
Mm-hmm.
make. But it like brought in a lot of buyers, and that was super popular. So those e-commerce wise were like my biggest differentiators. And then I also ended up hosting like a slime convention that definitely differentiated myself a bit in the slime space. It ended up being like the first California slime convention. And it
Nice.
was like super, super fun for me. It was like probably one of the best days of my life, honestly. Um, and so doing that, I knew would be also a really great way to get my name out there and stand out a little bit amongst the crowd. It also helped that I was a boy and it was like mostly girls in like the slime world. So the fact that it was like a little boy making slime definitely differentiated me more as a personality and I guess as the content of my slime. That helps make me stand out a little bit too.
Awesome. So being in the slime space for nearly about 10 years, what do you see as, the future of slime? Do you think slime will continue, having this trend, or like, with AI and VR, AR stuff, like, do you think slime can also place some kind of implementation into these technologies?
Totally. I mean, in the very beginning, everyone was saying, slime's going to last 2 years max. Like all of you people that are dedicating your everything to it, like waste of time. It's
Hmm.
not going to last. And then that obviously has been proven wrong. And so I honestly, it's such a unique area of e-commerce because there's no like publicly traded slime companies besides like Nickelodeon and like Elmer's and
Hmm.
stuff, but like
Yeah.
we honestly like kind of disassociate from that. Um, so there's no like publicly traded slime companies. There's no even like the biggest slime names like Snoop Slimes or like Slime OG. Like they're not like VC backed. They're not like
Hmm.
don't have investors. They're not working with like they're not getting bought out by like private equity firms because like no one knows like how to run a slime company minus like the person themselves. So it's interesting to try and see how it fits in with like the times because it's so unique and it's so niche. But I just see it like kind of staying in its own lane. And I'm sure I haven't even thought about how like AI could or VR could meddle its way into the slime space. But I mean, I'm sure there's going to be something that like slime finds its way to mesh with those things. But I honestly, it's very unique, and it's like I said, there's not really a ton of competition amongst like different slime sellers. Like even
Hmm.
like the biggest slime companies would always like promote other people's restocks, and it was a very collaborative environment that wasn't very cutthroat, honestly, at all. So the fact that it's honestly defying a lot of like basic like economic principles, which I think is really interesting. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I see definitely a long term lifespan for slime. I mean, if it's stayed this incredibly relevant for this long, I think it just like keeps attracting new generation after generation of like middle school girls for the most part. But people just like still are infatuated with it. And as TikTok definitely gave it a big boost that it didn't have.
Hmm.
It was starting to like lack a little bit on Instagram. And I'm sure with like whatever the next big tech thing is, maybe ChatGPT will help with it. I don't know. But no, I see it definitely progressing with the times, maybe on its own terms, but definitely continuing to have an upward trajectory.
Awesome. So extending from this question, um, how big is like the overall slime market? And it seems like you also done like other stuff, right? You did like TikTok contracting and stuff like that, which we're gonna talk about later. But do you think someone can make like a full-time living with just a slime business? And why did you personally like, kind of pursue? I saw you were trying to do some kind of JP Morgan analyst, pursue that more like professional path instead of going full time on your slime business.
Yeah. So I know a ton of people that do it full time. Mostly like adults at this point, but there's Snoop Slimes is like, I'll use her as an example again. She's the same age as me. She's also like a full time student at UT,
Hmm.
and she's running probably the biggest like slime operation in the world. Like definitely is making racking up like millions upon millions upon millions. And I don't even know if she's turned 20 yet, but she's young. And so definitely if you scale it big, then it 100% could be someone can make all of the money that they need from slime. And there's other people who do it like kind of more of like the mom and pop shop type way that I did,
Hmm.
where I didn't have, you know, a crew of like 200 to 300 employees. I didn't have like tens of thousands of square footage of like warehouse space. But if I like, it wasn't the most sustainable for me because I was also like balancing like high school and stuff and like wanted to get into college and like all these things. So
Yeah.
I never had the capacity to go like all the way for it, but it definitely is 1000% a space where someone could 100% pursue it full time. And there's new, every time I like log into my Slime account and I see like what's trending at the moment, there's always new businesses that are popping up. And it's definitely the barriers to entry for like the slime space like aren't super high. So really anyone, if you're creative and you have like the drive for it, it's definitely a space that isn't talked about enough, and you could definitely become super, super,
Hmm.
super successful off of it. And the market definitely reaches very wide. The vast majority of, I mean, just speaking for like myself, definitely like the United States has a huge market for it, but Asia has probably even like a bigger market for it. Like a lot of I sold internationally, and a lot of my sales came from Singapore, Japan, um, like Korea. Those were like kind of like the big hot spots. And then the United States obviously is a big place as well for it. Even like Brazil, I know there's a ton of people flocking from there to get slime. And all these people like travel from like all across the world also to attend like these slime conventions, which is really interesting to see the vast array of how many people were interested in like glue and borax. But it's a very expansive market for sure. It's interesting.
Nice. So I think many people are also really curious, right? You know, they want to start their own slime business and asking, you know, basically a successful slime business owner, what are your secret sauce, right? What are your secret sauce to TikTok, Instagram, you know, all of these social platforms?
Yeah, definitely you have to capitalize on what's trending at the moment. Um, you know, how your niche can fit into whatever's trending at the moment. And so whether that's just like at the most basic level, just like using a trending sound to like a video of you poking your slime, like probably won't do
Yeah.
great, but you know, that's a good way to start. And also just looking at what other people in your industry and in your like specific niche are doing and what's successful for them is the best way. There's a lot of like ebbs and flows in the slime world with like different textures, scents, and there's so many different aspects of slime. I could like talk about forever. It's really interesting, but making sure that you're following along with um, what's trending at the moment with like in the slime space, also not even just TikTok in general. But I honestly don't even know like what texture is like big right now. Last I checked, it was like this Bingsu bead slime that looked interesting,
Hmm.
but I haven't been super involved with it in a couple of years, so I don't even know what's trending at the moment. But I'm sure it's something crazy. So definitely just you have to do research. You have to really spend a lot of time. You have to turn into a little bit of a screenager and just kind of scroll forever and ever and see what's happening, what's popping at the moment, and like the more broader TikTok world, and then also in whatever your niche of slime is. So just keeping up to date with all that is definitely the best way to capitalize social media wise.
Nice. So in the slime industry, would you say, you know, the video types, they're like really similar to each other, or how did you find the style that you replicated to get, you know, lots of views for like the most recent years when you run your slime business?
Yeah. So I started out. I remember replicating like these outdoor videos that this one slime creator, Audie Slimes, used to make. She would hold the container like in front of a bush, and it was like super unique because everyone else was just doing it like on a white table. So I was like, oh, like I like that. I'll start doing that as well. So I started just like things like that. I think as I grew in the slime world, I realized that it's more so like the content of the slime than like your surroundings. So I would just like stick with like a white background. I would film outside, so I'd have like bird noises and stuff, and people would like that. Sometimes there'd be like hawks squealing, and then that would leave like a funny comment that people would like. Um, but it's more so like the textures and the even there's so many different like ways to like go about like slime trends, but even just like the way that people make their slime sound,
Hmm.
like the way that they manipulate it in their hands can even turn into a trend. So like picking up on things like that, you have to be like pretty attentive. But you'll see that like a bunch of creators at the same time are like, there was the thing called like slime flipping where like
Yeah.
I don't have slime around me, but like you would like basically it's like flip it over and it was like a huge thing. And so just like things like that, like picking up on that. And if you have like a slime business that you like really look up to, um, get inspiration from there. I used to get like all my inspiration from like Pinterest and like I would look up like trending foods.
Hmm.
So like also like incorporate things from like your personal life. So I had like this really awesome like honey cake in the Bay Area, and I was like, oh, this would make a stick slime. So I made like a really cool slime out of it. Or even like there was one of like my favorite boba shop had this like dirt boba tea that was like crushed Oreos with like a little mint leaf on top. And it's like that would make another really good slime. So just like finding inspiration from the things that are like personal to you as well, and making sure that it's all genuine is also super important. Because people can see through that. If you're just like copying like every single trend and like doing like verbatim what every single slime creator is doing, obviously that's not going to work. So you have to like make sure that it's personalized as well and is true to you. And I'd say that's probably the best way to stick out and make sure that you know find success in the slime industry.
Awesome, awesome. So switching over to kind of the more professional scene, you're gonna be an upcoming analyst at JP Morgan. So before we dive into your overall decision process with that, in like back to you Chicago, right? You took economics. Like why don't you take business management instead, or like business administration, as many people do?
Yeah, so I actually did want to study business in college. That was like my like main plan. I was like, I'm a business guy. Like, of course I'm going to do
Hmm.
business. But U Chicago actually doesn't have like a business major, and I came to realize
Hmm.
that a lot of schools don't. Like all the schools that I really wanted to go to, like Harvard or like Stanford, like none of the schools have undergraduate business programs, which I learned a little too late into my like college career or college application career. Um, so I chose economics because it was like the most similar to business. But there has my school just recently started a new like subset of economics major. So I made my like specific major is economics with like a concentration in business economics. So I get to take classes in like the graduate business school, which is nice. So I get to take classes along like other Booth MBA students
Nice.
and still get like kind of like the undergraduate business feel. Um, but it's still definitely like primarily economics based, which I was very worried going into because I did not like my high school economics classes a whole lot. So, but it's a cool where I'm learning economics is a really good place to learn it. So I've enjoyed it so far. But yeah, that's my reason why I didn't do business.
All right, makes sense. So looping back to the point of JP Morgan, I think someone just looking at your profile, they'll think that you're going to go the entrepreneurship path with
Yeah,
15 years old starting business. Why do you choose JP Morgan? Could you like briefly just break it down?
yeah, totally. I think I was just looking for something that was going to be like sustainable for me. I knew that I had kind of already like shut down the idea of like continuing my slime business because I, for one, didn't want to move back home and didn't want to like keep having to like do it out of my attic. And I knew that scaling it up after 4 years of college and like being dormant, having it be dormant for 4 years was not going to be the best thing for me. And I'm a part of like some like business organizations on campus, and I knew a lot of people. U Chicago sends a lot of people into finance, and so there was like everyone around me was doing kind of finance recruiting, and I ended up just going to like a networking event at the at JP Morgan Chicago office, and just really like the idea of working at the bank, and definitely saw it as like a really good place, like start my career, and like maybe I'll stay in it forever. Maybe
Hmm.
I'll continue. I mean, I actually know that I will like definitely like pursue like entrepreneurship stuff.
Hmm.
So it's it's just like a good place I think for me to be right out of undergrad, and I'll definitely like learn a ton. And like I said, like maybe I'll stick with it forever. But I definitely, I'm a very entrepreneurial person, so I know that'll always like kick in. But yeah, that's kind of like my rate. There were everyone around me also. It was like a very finance like incubator place in Chicago used to be. And so once like finance recruiting rolled around, I was like, oh, I should probably like look into this. And then all the people that I met like through networking and people I'll be working with next summer like seem like absolutely amazing. So I'm super excited to like see what it's like working in like the corporate space because I've never really had like
Yeah.
I've had like bosses before for like internships, but I like really worked for myself most of the time. So, and also like in very small environments, like I worked at a startup last summer, but I was also like very small controlled group. Like there were like 15 of us, like, and I was running my slime business. It was literally just me and like a couple of friends that I would employ. So working for like a huge company like JP Morgan, I think will be a really great like learning opportunity for me. And it'll be a big switch up for sure from my like past work experiences.
Nice. I really agree with the point where you talk about how entrepreneurs they have this kind. I feel like if your networks with as like lots of entrepreneurs, you probably might have this kind of like social judgment for going into more like corporate world. But I guess it's just a really good experience to have as well in life. So talking about life, what is your general timeline if you have one? Like 5 years, 10 years down the line, what is your goals and what it is your overall purpose as well?
Gosh, that's scary. I think like short term, um, I want to move to New York, or actually, I'm not sure. I want to move. I want to stay in a city, so either like New York or Chicago, um, and I want to be like probably working with, or I know I want to be working with JP Morgan. So with that, definitely just like getting my experience and like working in the corporate world, seeing what it's like to be an adult. Um, it's exciting. But I guess like before that, even like my next 2 years of college, I just want to soak up as much as possible. The last 2 years, I've been like very, very stressed with just like, getting good grades and recruiting last year was super stressful. But I, and I'm still going to like obviously focus on my school, but I have a little bit like more leniency with that now. So I'm just going to try and soak up as many experiences as possible. I'm studying abroad this year, which is going to be super fun.
Awesome.
And just being able to like experience all things college for these next 2 years. But yeah, once I graduate, definitely like working the corporate life, seeing what that's like. Um, and I'll definitely always be entrepreneurial. And that's what I'm going into. Like I'm going to be working in the private bank at JP Morgan, and that's like probably like the most like entrepreneurial like type role that you could have at the bank. You basically just like work with like your own like portfolio of clients, and it's like basically like your own business. So also get to employ like a lot of my entrepreneurial aspects in that sense, and that's why I ended up like choosing recruiting for that because of the entrepreneurial aspect. But even outside of that, like I know I'm still going to be like doing startup stuff, and I'm doing like a startup incubator on campus. Um, I'm starting it in the fall, and then I'm going to probably be finishing it my senior year. So I'm still always like going to be in that space, and like maybe that'll take off. Maybe I'll like do that full time. But I don't know. It's all very up in the air. But I definitely have like I have some like good goals that I'm trying to accomplish, but taking it one step at a time.
Nice. Just to wrap everything up, what is one of the biggest advice that you'll give someone, like an entrepreneur listening, like young entrepreneur, other than, follow your passion, those common ones? Like what is one of the more, I guess, underrated advice that you have?
Um, I think what a lot of people like brush over and like try not to think about, because obviously like being passionate about it is like the utmost important thing. You're not going to be successful if you don't care about what you're doing. But also like make sure that what you're putting all your energy into is like sustainable for you and is actually going to be able to like support you, not even like in a fiscal sense, but like or kind of in a fiscal sense, obviously that's like part of it, but um, with like your time management and with making sure that you can also prioritize the other things in life that you love. So making sure that like whatever venture it is that you're looking to embark on, ensure that it also supports all the other different aspects of your life, because it should not consume everything.
Hmm.
And that was definitely something when I was like literally only like 15 years old. Like I definitely let my business consume everything in me. I was up at like 6 a.m., like working into like 3 a.m. Like it was ridiculous. It was actually stupid how much I was working as like a 15-year-old, but it was because I didn't like have that balance and I didn't know what balance was. And so it took me working my butt off as a teenager to instill some sort of discipline in that respect. So yeah, of course, obviously, you have to be passionate about what you're doing. Make sure that you understand like the reasoning behind like every move that you're making in order to create something that is hopefully successful. But don't forget about the little things on the way as well.
Well, I think when you work basically full time or even overtime when you're 15, I think it was a really good thing because it kind of shows your passion, and I think it probably led to your success as well. So I think it should be something that I guess more people should do when they're younger. But when they get older, you obviously need to find that balance when different things comes up, when college becomes more important, studies, etc.
For
But
sure.
yeah, Ricky, really appreciate you hopping on the Gen Z fasting. We'll definitely stay connected. I'll link Ricky's socials in the description for anyone who's looking to talk about slime or whatever business what Ichigago does to network in general. But yeah, again, hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Until the next one, peace out.